The rain in Seoul that October night didn't fall. It hammered. It drummed against the glass of the 22nd floor penthouse, like something trying to get in, or maybe something trying to warn her. Imani Broussard stood barefoot on the marble floor, her cream silk dress soaked through at the hem. Mascara streaked down her cheekbones like war paint. In her trembling right hand, she held a manila envelope. In her left, she held a wedding ring that wasn't hers anymore. A 2-carat cushion cut she'd worn for exactly 7 years, 3 months, and 11 days. Across the room, seated on the black leather sofa with the calm of a man who had never once in his life raised his voice to be heard, was Do-yoon Seok. His charcoal suit jacket was draped over the armrest. His crisp white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His hands, those scarred, elegant hands that had signed billion-1 contracts and, according to whispers, ended lives, rested loosely between his knees. He didn't move toward her. He didn't need to. "Imani-see," he said quietly in that low, unhurried voice that always sounded like a secret. "Whatever is in that envelope, you don't have to open it alone." She looked up at him, and for the first time in her 34 years of surviving other people's expectations, she understood something terrible and beautiful all at once. The man watching her from that couch was not going to save her. He was going to let her save herself. She just had to decide if she was brave enough. But to understand how Imani ended up here, standing in a stranger's penthouse with her past in one hand and her future in the other, we need to go back. If you've ever poured yourself into a relationship, a job, a family, and looked up one day to realize nobody was pouring back, this story is for you. If you've ever been called strong so many times that people stopped noticing when you were breaking, this story is for you. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to choose yourself, not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of long overdue self-respect, then stay right where you are. Because what Imani Broussard did in the next 90 days didn't just change her life. It rewrote every rule she'd ever been taught about what a good woman was supposed to accept. Before we go on, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, telling me, what city are you watching from? I want to know exactly who's here for this journey, and if you've ever been the woman who held everything together while everyone else fell apart. Type, "I see her," in the comments. Let her know she's not alone. Now, back to Imani, back to before the penthouse, back to Atlanta. 18 months earlier, Imani Broussard was the kind of woman other people described as impressive, usually right before they asked her for something. She was 32 years old, a senior compliance analyst at Meridian Grove Capital in Buckhead, pulling in $142,000 a year plus bonus. She wore tailored blazers in eggplant and camel, and she was always, the first one in the office and the last one to leave. Her boss, a silver-haired man named Preston Ashcroft, once told a room full of executives, "Imani doesn't need management. Imani needs a cape." Everybody laughed. Imani smiled the smile she'd perfected in 9th grade, the one that said, "I heard you, and I'm grateful, and please don't ask me how I actually am." Because how she actually was exhausted. Her husband, Trevor Halloway, was a real estate developer, or at least that's what his business card said. What he actually did most days was drink oat milk lattes at a co-working space in Midtown, take meetings that never closed, and tell Imani over dinner that his next deal was going to be the one. He'd been telling her that for 4 years. Their joint account, which she funded almost entirely, was down to $11,000. His personal credit card, which she'd co-signed in 2019 during what he called a temporary rough patch, was carrying a balance of $63,000. She never brought it up, not because she wasn't angry, but because every time she opened her mouth to say something, she remembered her mother, Delphine, sitting at the kitchen table in Baton Rouge saying, "Baby, a good woman builds. A good woman doesn't tear down." Imani had been building for a long time. She was also, in every practical sense, raising her younger sister Kenya's 2 kids on the weekends, buying their school clothes, paying for their summer camp, showing up to Amir's basketball games while Kenya worked on herself in ways that seemed to involve a lot of Instagram lives and very little actual work. Imani never complained. Amir was 7. Zuri was 5. Somebody had to show up. Her father had passed when she was 19. Her mother, still in Louisiana, called every Sunday to remind her that a woman without children by 35 was letting the good years spoil on the vine. Imani would hold the phone against her ear, staring out at the Atlanta skyline from her 12th floor condo, and murmur, "Yes, Mama. I know, Mama." The lie she believed, the one she'd been fed since she was old enough to braid her own hair, was simple. If you carry enough, love enough, sacrifice enough, one day the people you're carrying will finally see you. They'll finally reach back. She was wrong. The first crack came on a Tuesday in April. She'd worked late on a compliance audit for a Korean shipping conglomerate, Hanul Logistics Group, that Meridian was underwriting. She got home at 9:45 to find Trevor on the couch, laughing at something on his phone, a half-eaten Postmates order congealing on the coffee table. "Babe," he said, not looking up, "I need you to Venmo me $1,200 by tomorrow. Deposit on the Kennesaw project." She stood in the doorway with her keys still in her hand. She waited for him to look up. He didn't. She walked past him into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and for reasons she couldn't explain then and could barely explain now, she started crying, silently, one hand pressed over her mouth, into the cold blue light. She didn't know it yet. But that was the last night she was going to cry alone. 2 weeks later, on the 8th of May, Meridian Grove hosted a private due diligence meeting for the Hanul Logistics deal, a $180 million credit facility that Imani had spent 4 months structuring. The meeting was held in the top floor conference room, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Peachtree Street. Imani wore her charcoal theory suit and the pearl earrings her grandmother had left her. She'd rehearsed her presentation 17 times. At exactly 9 a.m., the Hanul delegation walked in. There were 5 of them. 4 wore identical navy suits and carried identical black leather portfolios. The 5th walked in last, a half step behind the others, and Imani felt him before she saw him, the way a room's temperature drops when a door somewhere in the building opens. He was maybe 40, 6 feet, lean, with the kind of shoulders that suggested he'd been an athlete before he was whatever he was now. His suit was blacker than black, the kind of black that swallowed light. His hair was cut short at the sides, longer on top, threaded with the earliest silver at the temples. And there was a scar, faint but unmistakable, running from the corner of his left jaw to just below his ear. He didn't sit at the head of the table. He sat 3 seats down on the side, and he didn't say a word for the first 40 minutes. He just watched her, not the way men usually watched her, with the low-grade appraisal she'd learned to ignore by 14. He watched her the way a jeweler watches a stone under a loupe, like he was seeing something the rest of the room hadn't noticed yet. Halfway through her presentation, when she was walking the delegation through Meridian's collateral valuation methodology, he raised a single finger. "Ms. Broussard," he said, and his English was almost accentless. Ivy League, she'd learn later, Wharton MBA, class of 2011. "You're risk-weighting on the port-side receivables. You've applied a haircut of 18%. May I ask, why not 22? The room went still. Preston Ashcroft, at the head of the table, cleared his throat like he was about to intervene. Imani didn't need him to. "Because your Busan operations posted a 12.4% recovery variance last fiscal year," she said calmly. "Not 20 plus. If I'd used 22, I'd be pricing in a risk that your books don't actually carry. That would cost you 7 basis points on the facility. I don't like overcharging clients for anxiety." Silence, and then the smallest smile at the corner of that scarred jaw. "Thank you," he said. "That's the first honest answer I've received from an American bank in 3 years. His name, according to the placard in front of him, was Do-yoon Seok. His title was Chief Strategy Officer, Hanul Group. That evening, as Imani was packing up her laptop in the emptied conference room, he came back, alone. He was holding 2 porcelain cups of what turned out to be genmaicha tea. "Ms. Broussard," he said, setting one in front of her, "I would like to ask you a question that has nothing to do with the deal. May I?" She nodded, cautious. Who is taking care of you? She stared at him. Nobody had asked her that in years, maybe ever. And something in her chest, some latch that had been rusted shut for a long time, moved. That's a strange question, Mr. Seok. It is, he agreed. But I've been in that chair for 40 minutes, watching you carry an entire room on your back, and I recognize the posture. I've had it myself. He set a plain white business card on the table. No logo, no company name, just a name and a number. When you're ready to answer that question honestly, call me. Then he left. Imani sat there for a long time, holding the card, feeling something she couldn't name. She didn't know it yet. But Do-yoon Seok wasn't just a Wharton-educated executive, and the Hanul logistics deal wasn't just about shipping containers. 3 weeks passed. Imani didn't call. She kept the card in the inside zipper pocket of her handbag, where she wouldn't accidentally see it, but where she was honest with herself about this in the shower, couldn't quite bring herself to throw it away. And then, on a Thursday afternoon in late May, everything blew apart. She was in the office when Preston Ashcroft called her into his corner suite. His face was gray. On his desk was a subpoena from the Georgia Attorney General's office and a printed email chain. "Imani," he said, "we have a problem, and you're at the center of it." Someone with access to Meridian's internal wire routing, had been moving unauthorized funds through the Hanul facility. 3 transactions, adding up to just under $400,000, had been routed to a Shell LLC in Nevada. The wire authorizations bore Imani's employee ID. She hadn't sent them. She would swear to God she hadn't sent them. But the electronic paper trail said she had. Preston's face was not sympathetic. Preston's face was calculating. The board is going to want a name by Monday. If it's not yours, you need to prove it. Fast. She drove home in a fog. She let herself into the condo. Trevor was on the couch, and on the coffee table, beside his laptop, was a manila folder she'd never seen before. She picked it up. Inside were bank statements for an LLC called Redbud Holdings, registered in Nevada, opened 14 months earlier. The signatory was Trevor Michael Halloway. The address on file was their condo. The 3 unauthorized deposits from Meridian, totaling $392,000, were all right there, along with debits, a Range Rover lease, an Airbnb in Tulum for someone named Brielle, $22,000 at a jeweler in Sandy Springs. Trevor looked up, saw the folder in her hand, saw her face. He didn't even try to lie. He just said, "Baby, I can explain." Something inside Imani, the same latch that had moved in the conference room, didn't just open now. It broke off. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She walked calmly into the bedroom, packed a weekend bag, and walked out. He was still calling her name when the elevator doors closed. She sat in her car in the parking garage for a long time. She was going to lose her job. She was going to be charged with wire fraud she didn't commit. She was going to lose her license, her career, her name. And she realized with a strange clarity, completely alone. Kenya wouldn't help. Her mother would tell her she should have been a better wife. Her friends were, when she thought about it, mostly Trevor's friends who tolerated her. She reached into her handbag, unzipped the inside pocket, pulled out the card. She sat there, thumb hovering over the number, for 11 minutes. Then she pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Ms. Broussard." Her voice was steady. She was surprised by that. "You asked me who was taking care of me. The honest answer is nobody, and I think I'm in serious trouble." There was a pause on the other end. Then, in that low, unhurried voice, "Where are you right now?" "My car. The parking garage on West Paces." "Stay there. A driver named Kwan will be there in 9 minutes. Silver Genesis, license plate ending in 4471. He works for me. He will not ask you questions. He will bring you somewhere safe. And Imani-see." A pause. "Before I help you, there is something you need to know about me. And after you know it, if you want to walk away, Kwan will drive you anywhere you like, and you will never hear from me again." "What do I need to know?" Hanul Logistics is legitimate. My family, however, is not entirely. I run the legitimate side. But some of the people I answer to no one at all. If you accept my help, that world touches yours. I will not lie to you about that." She sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, and understood, with a small, dark laugh, that the safest offer she'd been made in a decade was coming from a man who had just told her he was, in some real sense, dangerous. "Send the car," she said. Kwon was silent as promised. He drove her not to a penthouse, but to a quiet office building in Sandy Springs, a place with no signage, no security guard she could see, and an elevator that required a fingerprint she didn't have. Do-yoon Seok was waiting on the 4th floor. So was a woman, mid-50s, tortoiseshell glasses, gray blazer, the kind of face that had heard every lie a human being was capable of telling, and had stopped being surprised by any of them. "Ms. Broussard," Do-yoon said. "This is Mrs. Yuna Bayek. She's been a criminal defense attorney for 29 years. She was until last year senior partner at Kang and Bayek. She now works only on cases I bring to her. She is the best lawyer I have ever met. She is also, and this matters, completely independent. If she believes you did what they say you did, she will tell me, and she will drop your case, and neither of us will hold it against her." Yuna Bayek studied Imani for a long moment. "Sit down, Miss Broussard. Tell me everything. And when I say everything, I mean the parts you have not admitted to yourself yet." Imani sat down. She talked for 3 hours, about Trevor, about the co-signed card, about Kenya's kids, about her mother, about the 17 times she'd wanted to leave and hadn't, about the $63,000 in credit card debt she'd been carrying like a second body, about the $400,000 she was now accused of stealing, about the moment in the parking garage when she realized she had built a life in which there was nobody, not one single person she could call. Yuna Bayek took notes. Do-yoon Seok did not. He just sat across the table with his hands folded, watching her the way he had in the conference room, like she was a stone he was learning the grain of. When Imani finally stopped talking, Yuna looked at Do-yoon, then at Imani. "I believe you," she said, "and I believe I can prove it, but I need you to understand the terms." Here is what she laid out. 1. Yuna would take the case. Do-yoon would pay her retainer, $120,000, as a loan to Imani at 0 interest, repayable in 3 years, not a gift, a loan, on paper, with a signed promissory note. "You are not going to owe him anything you did not agree to," Yuna said. "I have watched what happens to women who accept gifts they cannot refuse. We do not do that here." 2. Yuna would build a case not just for Imani's innocence, but for federal charges against Trevor, wire fraud, identity theft, criminal impersonation. This would be a war. Trevor would fight dirty. He would call her a jealous wife. He would call her mother. He would leak things. 3. Imani had to be willing to lose everything before she could keep anything. The condo, in her name but shared. Her marriage, her mother's approval, the friend group, her boss's trust, at least temporarily. Yuna said it plainly. "You cannot walk this road and keep every version of yourself intact. The woman who stole is not you. But the woman who let herself be stolen from? She has to die. Are you prepared to bury her?" Imani sat very still. Do-yoon spoke for the first time in over an hour. "Imani-si, I want to say something, and I want you to hear it as a person, not as a client. You do not owe me anything for tonight. Not your gratitude, not your affection, not your presence. If you take Mrs. Bayek's help and fight this and win and I never see you again, that is a good outcome. I am not offering you rescue. I am offering you tools. Yuna is a tool. Kwon is a tool. My resources are tools. What you build with them is yours." A pause. "And if, in some future I cannot predict, we know each other differently, that will be because you chose it, freely, from a life you rebuilt yourself. Not from this room, not tonight." Imani looked at him for a long time. She had known him for less than 4 hours in total. And yet? "Why?" she asked. "Why me?" He was quiet. Then, because 7 years ago, my older sister was in a chair very much like the one you are sitting in. She did not have a Mrs. Baek. She did not have anyone. I was in New York. I was building a career. I did not answer the phone the last time she called. So when I saw you carrying that room, Imani, I recognized the posture. I told you that. I did not tell you why. Imani exhaled, a long, slow, shaking breath. She looked at Yoona Baek. Where do I sign? Yoona Baek did not waste time. By Monday morning at 8:15, Imani was walking back into Meridian Grove Capital, not in a theory suit, but in a plain black dress, flanked by an attorney whose reputation walked into rooms before she did. Yoona requested a meeting with Preston Ashcroft, General Counsel, and the head of HR. In that meeting, she produced a 40-page forensic memorandum, prepared over the weekend by an accountant Do-yoon had flown in from Seoul, demonstrating that the 3 unauthorized wires had been initiated from an IP address associated with a coffee shop on Piedmont, a coffee shop Trevor Halloway frequented and Imani had never entered. She produced Trevor's Redbud Holdings bank statements. She produced photographs of the Range Rover in the condo garage. She produced a signed affidavit from a Meridian junior analyst named Delaney Chen, who had noticed months ago that Imani's employee credentials were being used to log into systems at hours when Imani was demonstrably elsewhere, and who had been too afraid, until Yoona's investigator sat with her, to speak up. By Monday at noon, Meridian's general counsel was on the phone with the Attorney General's office, redirecting the subpoena. By Tuesday, Trevor Halloway had been arrested at a Starbucks on Peachtree. But the real battle wasn't the criminal case. The real battle happened in the small, quiet rooms in between. The first was with Imani's mother. Delphine called on Wednesday. She had heard, somehow. Kenya had told her. Her voice was tight and disappointed. Imani, what did you do to that boy? Baby, marriages have rough patches. You don't send a man to jail over money. Family doesn't do that. Imani was sitting on the balcony of the executive rental apartment Yoona's firm had arranged for her, a corporate short-term in Midtown, paid for at market rate by the loan Do-yoon had extended, and Yoona had documented on a legal promissory note. Mama, she said quietly, he wasn't in a rough patch. He stole $400,000 using my name and almost put me in federal prison. I would like you to hear that. Just that. Before you say anything else. There was silence on the line. Then Delphine said, softer, Baby, why didn't you tell me it was that bad? And for the first time in her adult life, Imani told her mother the truth. Not the polished version, not the yes, mama version, the real version. She was on that balcony for 1 hour and 40 minutes. When she hung up, her mother wasn't fixed. But her mother was, for the first time, listening. The second battle was with Kenya, who showed up at the rental unannounced on Friday, demanding to know why Imani had cut her off. She hadn't. She had simply, for the first time, said no to a $2,000 Zelle request the previous week. Kenya, standing in the doorway, called her selfish, called her cold, said Amir was going to remember this. Imani felt the old thing rise up in her. The panic, the reflexive, you're right, I'm sorry. How much do you need? She swallowed it. Kenya, she said, I love Amir and Zuri more than my own life. I have loved them from the day they were born. I will continue to love them, but I am not their mother. You are. And I cannot keep funding your absence and calling it love. When you are ready to talk about how we actually share raising them, not how I quietly do it while you post, I will be here. Kenya left, slamming the door. Imani cried for 20 minutes. Then she made tea. Then she went back to work on the deposition Yoona needed by Monday. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, I need to tell you this because it matters. Do-yoon Seok did not come to see her. He did not call. He sent one text, 3 weeks in. If you need anything, ask Kwan. If you do not, that is also good. DYS. That was it. Are you still with me? If you are, do me a favor. Hit that like button because you don't know what it does to a video like this. And drop a comment. What boundary did you finally set that changed everything? I read every one. Because Imani was about to walk into a courtroom. And what happened there is not what you're expecting. The criminal trial of Trevor Michael Holloway began on a Wednesday in September in a wood-paneled courtroom in downtown Atlanta. Imani wore a slate blue Max Mara suit she had bought herself with her own money, her first purchase after Meridian had not only reinstated her, but promoted her to Director of Risk Advisory, with a base salary of $186,000, plus a signing bonus that made her weep in Preston Ashcroft's office when he handed her the letter. She sat in the second row behind the prosecution. She did not look at Trevor, not once, not when he was walked in, not when he tried to catch her eye, not when his attorney, a slick young man in a suit too shiny for the room, tried to argue that Imani was a scorned wife weaponizing the legal system. Yuna Bayek, who was not technically Imani's attorney in the criminal case but had briefed the prosecution meticulously, sat in the third row. When the shiny attorney made his scorned wife argument, Yuna wrote a single note on a legal pad and slid it forward to the prosecutor. It said, IP logs, coffee shop timestamp. Ask about the Sandy Springs jeweler receipts. The prosecutor did. Trevor Holloway, on the stand, tried to smile his way through the cross-examination. He tried the boyish laugh that had, for 7 years, made Imani forgive things she should not have forgiven. He tried at one point to look at her, soft eyes, trembling lip. Imani looked back. She did not glare. She did not smirk. She looked at him the way you look at a chair you're about to give away, with a mild, distant recognition that it had once been useful and would now belong to someone else. Something in his face broke. He knew. He'd lost her before he'd lost the case. The verdict came down on a Thursday morning, guilty on all 4 counts: wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, criminal impersonation, and 1 count of forgery in the first degree. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. His attorney was already making noises about appeal. Outside the courthouse, a small cluster of local reporters. One of them, a woman from the AJC, pushed a microphone toward Imani. "Miss Broussard, do you have anything to say?" Imani stopped. She thought about it. "Just one thing," she said. "For a long time I thought loving somebody meant carrying what they wouldn't. I was wrong. Love and self-erasure are not the same thing. That's all." She walked away. That afternoon, back at her desk at Meridian, she opened her personal email. There was a message from Do-yoon Seok, the first in 4 months. It was one line: "Imani C, whenever you are ready." DYS. She read it 3 times. She did not reply that day, or the next. She wanted, she realized, to be ready on her own terms. The confrontation came in late September, on a Saturday. Trevor's mother, a woman named Gwendolyn Holloway, a retired music teacher from Marietta, who had never particularly liked Imani but had always been careful to be polite, appeared at Imani's new apartment. Imani had, by then, bought a 2-bedroom in Inman Park, herself, down payment from her own savings, mortgage in her name alone. She had 1 white orchid on the kitchen counter, and a reading chair in the corner, and, for the first time in her adult life, no drawer full of somebody else's mail. Gwendolyn stood in her hallway holding a small dish of peach cobbler and saran wrap, as if that were still a currency between them. "Imani, honey," she said, "I know you had to do what you did. I understand. But Trevor is going to serve 5 years. 5 years, baby. And when he comes out, he's going to have nothing. No career, no credit, nothing. And I know you. I know your heart. I'm not asking you to take him back. I'm asking you to write the parole board when the time comes. Tell them he's a good man who made a mistake. Tell them you forgive him. That's all. Just a letter from the wife would carry weight." Imani looked at this woman she had cooked Thanksgiving for 6 times. The old Imani would have said yes. The old Imani would have said, "Of course, Miss Gwen, of course, whatever you need." The new Imani took the peach cobbler. She set it gently on the entryway console. "Miss Gwen," she said, "I loved your son. I want you to know that. I loved him honestly, for a long time. And when he is up for parole, I hope he is a changed man. I truly do. But I will not write that letter. Not because I'm angry, because it would be a lie. And I have spent enough of my life telling lies to keep other people comfortable. If he becomes a man worth vouching for, someone who actually knows him, then we'll vouch. It cannot be me. I am not that woman anymore." Gwendolyn Halloway stared at her, her eyes filled. "I don't recognize you." Imani nodded slowly.
"That's all right, Miss Gwen. I do."
She walked Gwendolyn to the door. She closed it gently and locked it. She stood in the hallway with her hand on the wood for a long moment. Then she picked up the peach cobbler, walked it down the hall, and left it on her neighbor's doorstep with a post-it. Enjoy. 4B. She went back inside. She sat in her reading chair. She did not cry. She realized, with a strange, quiet awe, that the woman her mother had raised her to be, the woman who carried everything so she would be loved for the carrying, was, finally, buried. And the woman sitting in the chair was somebody Imani had never met before, but recognized. By the second week of October, 3 things had happened. First, Meridian Grove Capital, at Preston Ashcroft's recommendation, formally offered Imani the position of Managing Director Global Risk, a promotion that made her the youngest managing director in the firm's 22-year history, and the first black woman ever to hold that title. Base salary, $240,000. Equity participation in the firm's carry pool. Her own team of 11 analysts. She accepted. She negotiated an additional $40,000 and an extra week of PTO. Preston laughed and said, "There she is." Second, the $63,000 credit card debt she had been carrying, the co-signed debt from 2019, was legally reassigned entirely to Trevor as part of the criminal restitution order. Her credit score over the following weeks would climb 78 points. Third, and this was the one that mattered most, she wrote her mother a letter, not a text. A letter, 6 pages, longhand, in the fountain pen her grandmother had left her. In it, she told Delphine everything she had never said, that she had been tired for a decade, that she had been performing the role of strong black woman who does not need anything since she was 15 years old and her father got sick, that she was not going to have children to satisfy a timeline, that she might have them one day, or she might not, but it would not be to earn her mother's approval, that she loved her, that she needed her, but as a mother, not as a scorekeeper. Delphine called her the day the letter arrived. Delphine, for the first time Imani could remember, cried on the phone. "Baby," she said, "I raised you to survive what I survived. I did not know how to raise you to be free. I am sorry. I am going to learn." Imani cried too, but it was a different kind of crying than the crying in the refrigerator light. It was the crying of a woman who had, at long last, been seen by the person she had spent her whole life trying to be seen by. That Friday night, Imani sat alone in her Inman Park apartment. She poured herself a glass of a good Sancerre. She looked around the room, at the orchid, at the reading chair, at the framed photograph of her at 23 before she'd learned to shrink. She raised her glass to the photograph. "There you are," she whispered. And then, finally, she picked up her phone. She opened Do-yoon Seok's email. She hit reply. "Do-yoon, I am ready. Not because I need you, because I would like to know you. Imani." She hit send before she could think about it. His reply came 11 minutes later. "Dinner, Tuesday, 7 p.m. I will send the address. DYS." Tuesday came. The address he sent was not a restaurant. It was a small private dining room at a Korean Anju place in Duluth, a place with no English signage, run by a woman named Mrs. Han, who greeted Do-yoon by his given name, and studied Imani with the kind of look that said he has never brought anyone here before, and I approve. Do-yoon stood when Imani walked in. He was wearing a simple charcoal sweater and black trousers. No suit. Somehow he looked more himself than she had ever seen him. They talked for 4 hours. He told her about his sister, the one who had called him and he had not answered. Her name had been Ji-eun. She had been 31. He told her about the 7 years since, about what he had built, about what he had stopped building, about the parts of his family's business he had walked away from, and the parts he was, slowly, trying to convert into something legitimate. He did not romanticize any of it. He did not ask for absolution. Imani listened, and then, when he was done, she told him her own things. Things she had not told Yuna, not told her mother, not told anyone. About the girl she had been at 19 when her father died. About who she had been trying to become since. At one point, near the end of the evening, Do-yoon reached across the table, slowly, giving her time to pull back, and placed his hand palm up between them. He didn't take her hand. He offered his. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she placed her hand in his, not gripped, rested.
Imani, see, he said quietly. I want to tell you something, and I want you to hear it clearly. I am not going to be a rescuer for you. You do not need one, and I would not be good at it if you did. What I would like, if you would like the same, is to be a person you know, slowly, honestly, on terms we both write together. Nothing more, nothing less. If at any point you want to stop, we stop. If at any point I do, I will say so. That is what I can offer. She held his hand a moment longer. That, she said, is more than anyone has ever offered me, and it is exactly enough. They did not kiss that night. He walked her to Kwan's car. He said goodnight in Korean, jalga, and she said it back, badly, and he smiled that small smile at the corner of his mouth. She sat in the back of the Genesis on the drive home and understood, with a calm that surprised her, that she was not falling. She was, for the first time in her life, standing, and choosing, with both feet on the ground, to walk toward someone who was standing too. For a long time, Imani Broussard had believed that love was what you earned by carrying more than you should. That worth was what you proved by never asking. That a good woman built and built and built, until there was nothing left of her but the building. She was wrong. Love, it turns out, is what happens when you stop translating yourself into a language other people find convenient. Worth is not proved. It is remembered, reclaimed, in small, quiet acts, in every room where you finally, gently, say no. Imani did not get the fairy tale. Trevor served his sentence. Kenya took 2 more years to grow up, and then she did, a little. Delphine came to visit Atlanta for the first time in 6 years, and cried in the Inman Park kitchen, and asked Imani to teach her how to make the tea she liked. Do-yoon Seok became, slowly and honestly, a man Imani chose, not out of need, not out of gratitude, but out of the daily, deliberate decision to walk beside someone who was walking beside her. She got something better than a fairy tale. She got herself back. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself, or your mother, or your sister, or the woman you're trying to become in any part of Imani's journey, do 3 things for me before you go. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with a woman who needs to hear it tonight. And drop a comment below. What is one thing you are going to stop carrying, starting today? Just one thing. Name it. Set it down. Because somewhere out there, right now, another Imani is sitting in a parking garage, wondering if it is too late. It isn't. It never was. She just needs to make the call.